background.
Likely on Monday, might be too sick.
Okay, so you've already been introduced to me.
Tracy, before you get started, can I ask a favor?
Sure.
Because I made you the host, you're the only one that can record the session. Would you be able to do that for us?
Hang on.
Jim, I'm recording it, I think.
Are you?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I had a message here that looked otherwise. Okay. I'm sorry, Tracy, go ahead.
Okay. This is the tech problem day, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
Friday the 13th.
That's it. Okay. Well, I'm very happy to be here and thank you for inviting me. So I am the director, as you heard, at the Center for Women Entrepreneurs at Texas Women's University. In 2021, TWU became a university system, which now includes Denton, Dallas, and Houston. TWU is officially the nation's first woman-focused university system. And the mission of us, of course, remains the same. We're still about transforming lives and cultivating leaders. So we are part of the larger Jane Nelson Institute for Women's Leadership at Texas Women's University. It houses our center, the Center for Women in Politics and Public Policy, and the Center for Student Leadership. The Jane Nelson Institute is dedicated to preparing more women to take on successful roles in business and public service to ensure women have the education to establish careers as successful C-suite executives, skills for building entrepreneurial businesses, and the framework to run for public office. And if any of you are ever out in the area, please stop in. We'll be happy to give you a tour. Our center, the Center for Women Entrepreneurs, was funded in 2015 by the state legislature just to help promote women entrepreneurs anywhere in the state of Texas. So you don't need to have any affiliation with TWU. And we help through small business advising, funding, training, networking, and mentoring opportunities. We also work in the community, we work with students and do research as well. What we're going to talk a lot about today, though, is grants. And so I wanted to give you a little bit of background on our grant programs. So the center has many different programs. We did the Assist Her Relief Grant in 2020, and this was an amazing grant opportunity. So we brought the idea to the school. It's so many women were sole providers, and with them not being able to go to work, it would affect home, rent, and everything else. So we wanted to offer this grant. So we were able to award $1 million to 100 women-owned businesses to help sustain their business under economic hardship. And on the next page, I'll go into a little more detail on that one, but it was really amazing that we were able to announce that grant. I believe it was March 23rd of 2020. So we were one of the very first out there offering funding to people in need. We also have the Center for Women Entrepreneurs. We have the Start Her grant. We've awarded just recently 25 women $5,000. Our last award was November of 2022. This has been an ongoing program since 2018. We also have the Veteran Woman Entrepreneur Grant. That one we have done twice, and we're going to do that again in the spring of this year. We've awarded $280,000 to 33 veteran women-owned businesses in Texas. And this picture down at the bottom are some of our actual Start Her grant winners. So the Assist Her grant, okay, it was March 28th when we announced it. So it is the only rolling grant ever offered. And what that meant is that as they came in, once we filled the 100 slots, that we wouldn't be offering any more. Usually we go through a longer judging committee, but this was based on the date. We received over 5,000 applications. So we had just gone home and I was the one taking all the phone calls related to the grant. So after day one, we removed the phone number because for every one phone call, we probably had about 3 more messages and 5 more emails asking questions. So we worked round the clock for weeks and weeks on this, and we really learned a lot about grants, grant writing, and what people really need to do to submit an effective grant. Most of the applications were disqualified, though, for including payroll, which was excluded. So that will bring us to probably one of the most common areas. People don't get a grant. They don't follow the instructions. And it is so important. So what exactly is a grant? Well, it's funding given without any type of repayment. It's given for a specific purpose. In our grant, they have, well, obviously not the assister grant, but in our other grants, they have to have a certain purpose and let us know what they are going to be using the funding for. A grant creates an exchange relationship between grantor and grantee. It is not a gift or charity, and it should always be considered a windfall. There is no guarantee that you are going to get any grant that you apply for. Coming from my advising side for so long, some people thought that they could fund their whole business on grants. And it just for a for-profit business, that's very unlikely. So what are some of the external grant terms? There are different ways in different places that you can find grants. So you may hear it called a grant, a gift, a fellowship. Our university, for some things, puts out RFPs, requests for proposal or call for proposals. FOA is a funding opportunity announcement. Some call them a solicitation. There are a lot of different things you may hear them being called. So where can you find them? So what's nice is you guys are going to get a copy of these slides. So all of this information is going to be on there for you. So it used to be there really weren't any grants for-profit businesses. It was always for nonprofits. People didn't realize, and they were always asking for grants, and there weren't any. But we're coming to a time now where there's a lot more opportunity for grants than there ever were before. So some of the places you could find them is through the government. There's small business grants that you can get. Grants.gov is one of the largest sites where you can find grants. And they even found ours online and added it to their page. Or to their website. So you may want to make sure that you check that just to see what's out there, because you never know what is there for the for-profit businesses. EDA has had a lot of grants. I Fund Women is a site, obviously, for women that has grants, and we have several others listed on here. Again, you'll get a copy of this that has all these resources on them. Other grant sources will include like local and state economic development sites, small business administration. I mean, you can Google and come up and find some of the different ones are there. But really a good rule of thumb is to follow local entrepreneurship centers, because we have a lot of different people sending us information on those. So I even follow the Center for Women Entrepreneurs. If you do on social media, we repost just about any grant opportunity that we find from anybody. So as you get these, there's some typical guidelines. Ours may not be as formal as some other grants, but some of the things you're going to find is eligibility. What is it you need? to apply for this. Of course, as we are funded for women, we need proof that they are woman-owned. They have to live in Texas. So read through all of that. The other is business information. What is your business about? And then a narrative. Ours is about what they want to use the funding for and how it will impact their business. You also want a budget, and then look at the submission. How are you going to turn this grant in? It's going to be online. Do you have to do it via email? Do you need to mail it in? Pay really close attention to everything that's in the guidelines. People, and this is important to know sometimes before you're doing, who is looking at the grant and what is the process? So it's good to know before you get started. And many of these will put in there what they are looking for, which is a clue for you as to what you should include in your grant proposal. So for us, we have staff, we have some external experts in the entrepreneur ecosystem. We've had people from our College of Business. We instruct them on how to evaluate. They have a rubric that everyone uses the same things. So we will judge the same so they can read and rate individually. And then we meet to talk about these. And then we may meet face-to-face or online just to review all of the grants and if there were issues. And again, we like to double check even then. We do a lot of vetting before we even get to that point. And many times during the review, we'll find things that we have not excluded the people from already who weren't eligible or didn't have the required information. So when you're getting ready to write, you want to consider the audience. Who is going to be reading this grant? Who are the reviewers? What is the industry that is asking for this? I had someone the other day and they were doing a grant and just asked if I would review it. And the grant application asked a lot in their guidelines. They really wanted high-tech, high-growth businesses. But as I was reading through their grant proposal, they didn't mention that they were any of it. So think about that when you are writing. Who is looking at this and what are they looking for? Think about this again and explain basic facts. We put on our website, and we even say you can copy and paste this. Sometimes people are really, really wordy. And when you are judging hundreds or thousands of grants, you don't have time for all that. If they don't use the template you've put out, it makes it really difficult to see if everything that we asked for is in your grant. So if they have a template, use that. If they have headings, use those headings and put your information right underneath it. That way it makes it very easy for them to read. Avoid industry jargon. This is often hard because we are so familiar with our business, our industry. We think everybody knows those words, but they don't. And that was something I advised the client the other day. Make sure you define any words, or if you have acronyms in there, at least spell it out once, because you don't know who all is reading that grant application. You want to make sure they understand it. You want to convince the reviewer also of the legitimacy of your problem, your solution, and your ability. I've had grants where I read a page and I still had no idea what their business was or what they wanted to do. So again, explain basic facts. We had one last time, again, that was 25 pages long, doesn't need to be that long. It had citations and references. That's not what we need. If they don't ask for it, don't send it. We often have people send in a business plan that has not been requested. And as you go through a business plan, it may not answer the questions that we have asked, so they're automatically disqualified if we can't find the answer to the questions for the grant. So preparation, and I cannot say this word near enough. Read, read, read. You have to read the proposal. You have to read the guidelines. You have to read the frequently asked questions and reread it again. Read the directions. How am I supposed to send this in? I can't tell you how many people ask a question and I copy and paste it right from our guidelines. Another one, you get a question. It's right there in our FAQ. Copy and paste and put it in. You really want to take your time and read through this. This is money for your business or for a client, or if you're working with a client for their business. You want to make sure that they put the best grant forward and have the most likely chances of winning. And when we see someone that keeps asking us questions like this, we know they haven't read. So take the time and read everything very carefully. Every year this happens, we open our grant and we have started pre-announcing them. So it gives people time to prepare. Every time. Someone will send something in like 2 hours after it opened. And you know what? They're disqualified because they didn't follow the instructions. They're missing documentation. They didn't show proof they're woman-owned. They didn't answer our questions. We've even have some that didn't send in a budget or a narrative. I mean, how can we fund something like that? So again, make sure you pay close attention to here. Our last grant, though, as I said, I think it was maybe the first 9 or 10 were ineligible. And it's because they were in such a hurry. You don't get any extra points for turning that grant in first. Are you a match for the grant? Are you eligible? We write our guidelines out very clearly. Has to be woman-owned. Has to be a Texas business. It has to be, you have to be a citizen or have the right to work in the United States. Has to be 51% or more woman-owned every year. I share this with my husband. It's 50-50. Does that count? No, it's not woman-owned if it's not 51% or higher. Does your goal meet the funder's mission? We're helping women entrepreneurs grow. Sometimes with it could be something that isn't really related to a startup or not a good match. Just make sure when you're reading through that it's a goal that meets the funder's mission. Does the grant size fit your project? Sometimes people need less money than what we are giving, but our grant is $5,000. It's not for $4,982. You're going to be disqualified. So make sure that it works. Every year we disqualify people because they have not shown how they are going to use the full grant amount. And does the timing work? Sometimes these can take a long time. Ours, from the time we get close applications, gosh, I think we're a little crazy, but some we've announced in 2 weeks, and that puts a whole lot of work on us. But really pay attention to the timing on that. If you have a project that's going to happen before the grant, that may not be the best one for you to apply for. With ours, grant funding has to be used after you receive the first half of the grant. So check, does the timing work and make sense for you? Ways to improve your chances. So again, I'd have to go back and just say, read fully through the application and make sure you answer every question that's on there. I think many times people really overthink this and want to make it something more than it is. Just answer the questions is really what we're looking for. Many places, especially some government agencies, you're able to obtain a successful proposal, maybe one that somebody had given a year or two before. Not everybody does this, but it's great if they do, and it gives you an opportunity to look at the things that they're looking for. You can tell everyone about your project. That helps. It helps people understand what you're looking for. If you have a relationship with a funder, you could request a conversation. I don't mind talking with people about the grant in the grant program. I cannot tell you what to put in there. We cannot help you write the grant. That's a conflict of interest, but we're happy to sit down and have a conversation if there's more details on specific questions, or you can do a marketing plan. There's certain types of advertising we don't, that because we're state funded, we can't do. But if you wanted to hire, one thing is you can't pay payroll, but you could have a consultant, which is different than somebody on your payroll. So again, if there are questions you have, and if the FAQ and nothing else helps, either have a conversation, send an email. Always happy to answer questions. See if you can attach a one-page summary for review. Some companies will let you do this. We don't have the time to go through everyone that may want us to look and see what their grant proposal is going to be about. But at some places you are able to do this. And ask questions, but don't be asking the questions that are in the FAQs or the guidelines or the document. Again, make sure you really, this is what so many people do, so make sure you don't do that. And then ask before submission. We don't let people send in updates. You can't send in a second submission. And I've never understood why somebody will ask a question when they've already submitted their application. There would have been plenty of time to fix it if you had asked before submitting. And many of times those that did that, they were disqualified. So your writing tips, you want to make sure that you're writing for the general public, because again, our reviewers come from all different backgrounds. You want to use the third person and be concise. As I said, we have gotten some that have had business plans or 24 pages, and it's really distracting on things like that. And something that is too long, we're able to miss what is actually needed. So again, be concise. First sentence is main point. As I've already said, we've seen some of these grants come in and we have no idea what their business is. Really get right to the main point, what you're looking for. And use grammar and spell check. That is so important on these. Some of them just look terrible. And there's so many online tools today, there really shouldn't be a reason that it looks like that. And this is like a sore spot. We also see it from places we've sponsored as well. They call us Texas Women's University. So we are Texas Women's. So whatever company it is, make sure you spell their name correctly. Narrative. So this is your time to shine. This is where you're going to write about your business or what you're looking for or what you're wanting to achieve with the grant. So do a brief history of your business. Include who you are, what you do, where you are, who you serve. I mean, tell the story here. It's always nice to hear kind of what led up to you starting this business. Um, did you always love helping others, so you became a consultant? I mean, usually there's something that triggers people to start the business that they're in. So make sure that you include some of that. That lets us know who you are and what led you to the business and what you're trying to do. And then who you serve, who your customers are, who your clients are. What makes your business unique? Why should we go with your business rather than somebody else's? Why should we buy from you? Here you want to put something in where we would know that you're offering something different and we'd want to purchase from you. What makes your business credible? You must convince the reader you have a stable, trustworthy organization. And again, this goes back to what problem does your business solve? What makes yours better, or what makes it right for the grant that you're looking at? Budget tips. So a budget is something you want to think about in the very beginning, because for many, this is the most difficult thing to prepare. And so the budget should match what you say in your proposal. Sometimes we see things, I want to do this, this, and this for my business. But when you go over to the budget, it's nowhere in the budget. So make sure you double and triple check all of those things. Budget should be reasonable. You want to create a budget by analyzing the tasks needed to complete each activity, and avoid lump sum requests and be as detailed as possible. So what we mean here, and I see it every time, and it's like, okay, these people are just making up numbers. I'm going to do this for $2,000, and this is going to be $1,500. I mean, honestly, things often come in $350, or if you're purchasing something, so when we see just straight numbers like that, it looks like you're just throwing a number out there without actually doing any research. Does it cost that much for what you want? Is your marketing or advertising budget? Maybe that, but sometimes that's not what the companies charge. So be really careful with the numbers that you're putting in here, and that they look like they're actual numbers that you've researched. One thing that we always ask for, and this is most often missed, is to send documentation showing what it is that you are going to purchase with the money that we're going to give you. And we say it can be an invoice. It could be a picture of something on Amazon. Doesn't have to be anything that's paid, but just something backing up the numbers that you're asking for. Another thing, again, as we say, be reasonable. We help people prepare business plans for free. SBDCs help people do it for free. We have people come in sometimes, they want to spend $1,800 on a business plan. That may not always, for some businesses, that may make sense. But again, as you're doing this, be realistic in the numbers that you're using and make sure that they are reasonable for what you're asking. You want to follow the funding source guidelines. You want to make sure you meet the amount of funding. This is so important. I mentioned this earlier. Many times they don't reach 5,000. So disqualify. We really don't like disqualifying people. Sometimes you read such a great application and it's like, oh, I love this company. Oops. Not enough money. They didn't submit this. They didn't do it. Reviewers and grant-making companies have to go by the guidelines. So if it says that you need that, you need to include it. If for some reason a question does not apply to your business, don't ignore it. You could put does not apply to my business. So that way we know that you saw and answered the question. We also ask that our grant winners put in a matching 10%. Doesn't even need to be at the time of the grant, but we like to know that people have skin in the game for their business as well. So matching funds or owner investment are the organization's contribution. Many times when we said this, or owner's equity, they thought we were trying to take a part of their business. So pay attention to the wording very carefully in the grant. So make it look like a budget. All right, this is very simple right here. This is something that somebody could do. We have gotten some where people write it in a paragraph. You don't know how difficult it is when you're reading to see if that equals or is higher than $5,000. So again, you're looking for funding. You want to look like a professional. You want to put it in something that looks like an actual budget. Review. This is so important. You don't want to do the grant and then just hurry and submit it, because that's where errors can happen. You want to ask somebody that has no idea what your business is to review it. Have them read through the grant proposal and see if it makes sense. We know our businesses so well that we think everybody else understands it. So if you can find someone who doesn't really know about your business, that they can read this proposal and understand what you're asking and what you're going to use the funding for. Similar to real review, because they know little about you. That's why it's important. So you want to make sure you have somebody else read through your grant proposal. And then check, does your budget match the rest of the proposal? There's nothing like these hanging numbers somewhere. What exactly are they buying? They said they were doing this, but they don't list it anywhere over here. So make sure that you do that. And then again, is it a match? Does what you have written match the criteria for the grant? Does it make sense? Is it something that think to yourself, really, if as you're reading this, is this something somebody would want to give me money for? Also look at your credibility as you go through there as well. Again, is your budget appropriate to meet goals? Did you put something in that was too high? Or did you put something in that it's like, there's no way they're going to be able to do that with $350. So make sure that everything makes sense as you go back and are checking. And then, did you follow the rules? We state this in our guidelines, in our FAQs, in our grant software as well. It tells us what we need to show you're woman-owned. It says, do not send a driver's license, a credit card, or a passport. Every year we get those. It's like, it's unbelievable that people are sharing. I mean, if we were criminals, we would have all of your information right there. That is not something that is asked for. So even as you're going in, and if it's an online form, make sure you read each and every one of those questions. And we have our questions on our website before you go in. But we've had people, when they went in, mark the wrong answer in a hurry, which disqualified them. So pay very much attention, and then even inside, read the questions again if they're the ones that you just check yes or no. Submission. Again, does the proposal meet the requirements? Do you have all the attachments? Make sure you put these all together. We ask for everything in one PDF. So read this before you get into, if you have to submit online or through an online application, make sure you have done all of this ahead of time because you are meeting time constraints. So you want to make sure you submit everything the first time because we don't allow, and many others don't, a second time. Allow enough time to meet the deadline. Internet problems happen. Every single year, there are late submittals. Even 5 seconds after is past the time. So always allow much more time, especially if it's an online portal, because you don't know how long it's going to take to get that in. I mean, it is heartbreaking to see that somebody spent that much time on this. We got to the very end and you missed it by 5, 10 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes. So pay attention to those. If you get an auto reply, make sure that you save that. For some reason, something happened, you can say, no, I show it was submitted and received at blah, blah, blah. We have that documentation. And then review the grant documents again for the award date. They're always posted somewhere, but it ends up soon after that. When will I know? Well, it's written there, but always follow up to find that. Some of the most asked questions, and these are helpful to you because it can help you as you're looking to do a grant. But some of those are, am I an eligible applicant? If you match the requirements that we've asked for, you are. If you don't match them, then you are not. When is the application due? The due date is written all over our website. It's also written in the portal where you apply. I didn't get a page uploaded. Can I send it to you? No, you're now disqualified because you didn't fulfill the requirements. Where do I go for additional questions? We keep it posted on there. Of course, there is the FAQ, but there are sometimes questions that are more detailed than that even. Will this grant be offered again next year? Ours are recurring grants, so those happen year after year. But if you're not sure with the company that you're working with, some take grants all year round. So it's nice to know that ahead of time. Will the deadlines be extended? We've never extended a deadline. And then what happens next after I receive my proposal? So this is what happens when they win the grant. So first, we want them to know that we'll go through the review process, and if they are a winner, then we'll spell everything out that they'll have to do next there. Follow up. So you want to check the notification dates again as to when everyone will be notified. Whether you are funded or not, it's nice to write a thank you note. Thank you for the opportunity to apply for this grant. We love what you're doing for women entrepreneurs. We love, it can be for whatever, if there's something that you like that this was offered, send a quick note on that. If successfully funded, read the notice of grant carefully. I haven't said this anywhere else, but the grant funding is taxable. So we do have that written out, but then there are always people later that come back as, I didn't know I had to pay taxes for this. Any money you're getting, more than likely is going to be taxed to you. If the proposal is not funded, ask for feedback from the funding agency. We don't always have time to do this, but when I send that other letter, I put the top reasons why they weren't funded. So typically if it says you needed to submit the part of your LLC that showed ownership. Many times people will just send something that has the name of a business that does not show ownership. So we are a little more broad. We put out that when we send the rejection, so many times they can figure out what they did wrong themselves. You can also check for other funding sources and then again, apply the next year. We've had people that some have even applied several years and then one in the third year or so. So make sure that you keep doing that and follow up again. Common disqualifiers: failing to allow enough time to submit, not reading the application package in its entirety. This goes back to rule number 1 about reading. Not following formatting guidelines. Sometimes we've had people send in an application that's in a zip file or something we have to unlock. Don't ever do that unless that's requested for. If I can't just read it, you're going to be ineligible. That's something to really remember when you're doing these. Many fail to proofread and then they don't sign or date the application. And some sign, but they don't put the date on. So make sure you pay attention to all those little details. Sometimes you just didn't score high enough. You had a great submittal. We love your business and what you're doing, but it just didn't score as high as some of the others. Again, we see no proof of woman-owned. They sent wrong documentation in. They didn't submit what was requested below the grant amount. So I'll go to questions, but everything that's on here, you will get a copy of.
Fantastic.
So I will stop sharing.
Well, I want
Okay.
to first thank you, Tracy. It's a fantastic presentation. For those people who weren't on earlier, I mentioned to Tracy that I live in Denton, where Texas Woman University is, and that I was a big fan of hers. And I wanted to mention to you, Tracy, you know what Groucho Marx would say to people who are big fans?
What?
Well, if it gets warmer, we're going to need a big fan. So thank you for that. Let's open the floor to questions.
Tracy, I just wanted to comment and thank you for the fact that you gave us very specific guidelines and maybe like an invitation to apply for the grant the Texas Women's University offers, but you also gave us a lot of food for thought for grants in general. So thank you for that sort of dual approach that you contained in all of your slides and the stories that you told as well.
Oh, great. Thank you.
So I have a question, Tracy. You had mentioned that people can use funds for consultants. Can you talk a little bit about opportunities for consultants as it relates to grants?
So in our grant, well, even if you're a woman consultant, you could apply for our grant. So there are restrictions against payroll, that we can't pay payroll. But let's say I wanted to use a marketing consultant or a management consultant to help me with something. Funding for that is allowed. So many of those, that's different than paying a salary, a W-2 employee.
Okay. Is it popular for startups to, let's say, be working within a startup center where consultants kind of connect with them to help them further their business?
There are some areas that have that, and there's some co-working spaces that have that as well. Many times they don't know where to find these people because they've never done it before, especially someone that's in startup. Many times they think they have to hire an employee when a consultant might be better than a long-term employee at that point.
Okay, fantastic. Can you talk a little bit about grants in Texas? How do grants work here in Texas versus other states, for example? Is it pretty much the same, different in any way?
Well, I mean, every state is different, but I feel like we have a lot of opportunities in Texas for grants. Some of them, I mean, it's great. We are Texas specific, but there are many other grants that aren't state specific. as well. So you always want to check those out. But because we're funded for Texas, we can only fund Texas businesses.
Okay.
It's a little off than what you asked, but but there are a lot of grant opportunities, and grants, especially since COVID, have really been growing for small businesses. Again, I was a small business advisor for years, and we used to say, grants, there aren't any grants out there. There aren't any grants for business. And now there's a slew of them.
Fantastic. You mentioned veterans earlier. We have one of our members who's a veteran. Can you talk a little about grants for veterans?
Well, there are many organizations that have grants for veterans. We specifically have them for Texas veteran women. But you can find others. And of course, this is a woman center as well, but the Veteran Women Entrepreneur Center also has some as well for women. But there are some others that are just for veterans. So you want to check those out. There's sometimes you can also get admission to Boots for Business, which is done by the Veteran Business Outreach Center. They may know of some specifically for veterans as well.
Fantastic. Randy, my apologies. I don't know how long you had your hand up, but I just noticed it. So go ahead.
That's okay. Tracy, a terrific presentation. I'm curious if there is an entity or two for those of us who are not women-owned businesses that you could recommend.
Well, there are lists on our on the PowerPoint, but Federal Express does some grants. One of the cellular companies gave some grants. There are many that are out there. And as I do a follow-up and get this to Jim, if there's some others that I have, I'll just include those on there. But there are quite a few that are out there. And some of those you may find on grants.gov as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Other questions?
Yeah. Tracy, does your grant program at Texas Women's University, which allows the recipients to hire consultants, must those consultants be in Texas?
No. No, the business does, but the consultant doesn't.
And a follow on to that, for folks that are, sorry, I was thinking of another thing. I'll come back. Next question.
Well, this is, and I meant to say this in the presentation. I thought I had a part on it. After the grant, if you didn't win, we've gotten hate mail. We are going by specific guidelines, and those are why we choose the winners. So if you didn't win, it's not because we didn't like you, or that really has nothing to do with it. Many of our grants have been blind with no names and other information in there as well. We love that people go to TWU, but this grant is open to any woman anywhere in. And I've had people say, well, I'm disappointed because I went to TWU. You have just as much opportunity as everybody else out there. So no, we are doing our best and trying to be impartial, and we are impartial on all of this. So if you didn't get it, it's best to, thank you or no reply. Because also when those that may come back like that, we're going to know if you apply next year. So just always be professional in your dealings with the company. And we always find it hurts us personally when we get something like that, because we've done our best to make sure that we have reviewers, not just from inside, but outside, judging these applications.
Tracy, the follow-on question I wanted to ask, sorry. whoever else was speaking. Once the recipients have been named, is it possible to review anything about their applications to see, for example, are they seeking consultants in their work?
So we haven't ever, sometimes they know by when they are starting that. They have looked for some consultants, so it may be something that happened ahead of before they submitted that. There could be an opportunity. So I mean, I see, obviously, I'm talking with consultants here. It could be something we have a link if they're needing something, referring them. If you need to find, you know, a legitimate consultant, because we're finding in a lot of our application, everybody's a coach or a consultant, but many of them have zero training. So it's nice to know when people are part of a professional organization that they are, you know, we feel like, you know, it could be something that we share if they are asking, or it could also be something that we could put on our website. Because we do share partners on our website.
Great. You know, Tracy, I had mentioned that for a long time I wanted to have grant writers on, and I really didn't know where to look. And I looked at universities and so forth. Is there like an association of grant writers out there that exists? Because it seems to me like, you know, for me, you'd be my go-to person if I were writing a grant, or maybe the Small Business Development Center. But how do other people find people to help with the process?
So there are a lot of grant writers out there. Many of them specialize in nonprofits and have for years and years. So I know there's associations for those. We often, like in our groups, don't recommend. We would rather you write your own grant, just like we would rather see somebody write their own business plan, because nobody knows it. They aren't going to be speaking in your voice. But there are organizations that do that, and really Google is, we can find so much online now that there are associations for grant writers.
Right. And I would imagine a Small Business Development Center, if you had a grant, you could bring it into them and they would peruse it for you to make sure that you signed your name and did all those little things that people overlook, correct?
Well, we recommend that, and that they could go to SCORE, they could go to SBDC, they could go to, there are a lot of free resources out there that they can use to get help with that. In our grants, we just don't give money. We make them go, we give them half of the money up front. They go through small business training, 5-week course on some of the basics, but we require them to do 3 hours of small business advising. And we tell them, if you have your own advisor, if you have somebody you're working with, go to SCORE, go to SBDC. You can come with us, or, you know, or we can advise you as well, because we realize the importance. If you're just giving money, are we really helping the business? And we also make them do a complete business plan with 3 years of financials. So
Fantastic. Other questions?
Yeah, we do a lot of, and Tracy, thanks for the presentation. It's very informative, a lot of information. We do a lot of RFPs for government, state and local government. A lot like writing a grant, an RFP. The fastest RFP I respond to took us 2 weeks. It's like that by 3 people. You have to go line by line, as you said, and you have to read, reread, proofread, and there's no cookie cutter for every RFP. It's all personalized to that entity of government that you're presenting it to. Once you hit that submit button, it's done.
that's it.
Right?
That's
And then
it.
go back. The question I have for you is, if you have grant money, let's say for 100 recipients, and you get 1,000 applications, you look at all 1,000 applications?
No, we announced a grant this year for $25,000 for very specific industries. And we've got 7 apps and none of them qualified. So we didn't, and us 250,000 we didn't give away. I mean, it's like, okay, what is wrong? How are we not doing this? But if there aren't, if there aren't good applicants, or if they don't qualify, they aren't going to get it. But if the funding, of course, was there on the big grant, we've only done one of those. I mean, with 5,000, surely we would have been able to only get 100 out of those. But, it was disappointing because like every 25 grants, maybe you got one that followed the rules.
And it's just re-read, just re-looking at everything.
Right,
Some are laid out, very clear, some are kind of complicated.
right.
And if you just, like you said, just follow the rules, the directions,
Mhm.
and nothing, you can't submit anything within the day of when it comes out to be public. It takes you longer than that.
Right. And we see that. And, we do some RFPs now, and our procurement department, oh, those are easy to read. I'm like, hello, no, they're not.
Yeah.
You guys know these RFPs and know them inside out. Other people don't. But many times when you're doing an RFP, they'll have calls where you can get on and ask questions. And so if there are any of those on an RFP or a grant, get on there and listen. You learn so much by doing that. When I was helping these women the other day, I know we're over time. If anyone needs to go. But there was even like a 40-minute YouTube. I actually watched the whole thing because how could I didn't feel like I could fairly judge what they turned in if I didn't know what all the rules were myself. So take advantage of all those things that they send out. We now do videos on the grant. We do videos on the FAQs. And every grant season, the hits on those on YouTube get really high.
I think the misconception people have is if I got mine in first, I'll be picked first, right?
Right. And that's not how it works at